What that means to Brexit, it will shake up the whole idea of what Brexit is for us as we go forward. Some will say this is reversing Brexit in all but name. No question that tomorrow morning, I think a lot of maybe Tory Brexiteers will be spitting out their cornflakes and dropping the marmalade, reading those headlines you read out just there, because there will be concern this is going to tie us closer and closer to the European Union, to make some wonder, well, what's the point of Brexit after all?
The Brexiteers are panicking that Keir Starmer is going to un-Brexit Britain because he is in Berlin with Olaf Scholz talking about repairing relations. But what has become apparent is that Britain itself is caught in a time warp, and that in 2016 the Brexit vote ensured that we actually didn't notice what anyone else was doing.
Well, it's a very interesting point, actually, because it reflects something of an outdated view of the EU, that European cooperation essentially means dealing with Berlin and Paris. And that's a view that is somewhat entrenched in London, but it's not actually kept pace with reality.
The Brexiteers all think that Germany controls the EU.
Hi, welcome to Berlin. The Brandenburg Gate is behind me. Sir Keir Starmer is staying here. He's our Prime Minister. He meets with Olaf Scholz tomorrow. The idea here is to 6 months to work out a deal, a treaty with Germany, covering all sorts of areas to boost trade, deepen defence, security, increase action on illegal migration and the like. He wants this to be a model of other deals with other EU countries as we go forward under this Labour government. The PM thinks privately that it's not reversing Brexit, that other treaties are done all the time. We've been trading with our friends and neighbours on the continent for hundreds of years, and here's a case of strengthening those bonds.
Will, as you've said, have a lot of Brexiteers spitting out their cornflakes and being very, very worried about it, and it's talking about a recalibration of our relationship with the European Union, and it covers, seemingly, quite a lot of ground.
It says here there'll be increased collaboration on market access, critical science, innovation and tech, clean energy, trade across the North Sea, supply chain resilience, energy security and green transition, education, biodiversity and the environment. That is a full waterfront of most key areas you may want to talk about with another country. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer was behind me at the Brandenburg Gate having a walkabout. I mean, he's clearly a person who he can do business with, and he clearly sees this deal with Germany as one to set the benchmark for other similar deals that I fully expect the UK to try and sign as we go forward through this 5-year period. What that means to Brexit, it will shake up the whole idea of what Brexit is for us as we go forward.
Exactly, and it's on that. Now, Christopher, at some point, I suppose it doesn't really matter, does it now, because there's a massive Labour majority, but at some point will this have to be voted on in Parliament?
Treaties normally are voted on in Parliament, but it's not normally controversial, because by the time they get to Parliament they've been agreed. Of course, that treaty with the EU was signed off and agreed in a rush, and detail filled in later. But it may well be that we don't see any detail of what's being agreed until it's presented as a fait accompli to Parliament, and that could really stir the hornet's nest amongst Brexiteers. Don't forget, Sir Keir Starmer has always said we are not going into the single market or the customs union. Those are two things are sacrosanct. The idea of sovereignty, he would say, isn't being touched by these agreements because we still remain outside of those two things. But by tying ourselves to the EU, to Germany, the biggest economy in Germany, on certain areas, some will say this is reversing Brexit in all but name, Patrick.
A new agreement, a testament to the depth and potential of our relationship, with deeper links on science, technology, development, people, business, culture, a boost to our trading relations. Germany, of course, already the UK's second largest trading partner in the world, and through that, a chance to create jobs here and in the United Kingdom, and deliver that most precious of goods for both our countries, economic growth. Let me be clear, growth is the #1 mission of my government, and what we understand clearly is that building relationships with our partners here in Germany and across Europe is vital to achieving it.
So let's discuss this further with Benjamin Tallis, who's director of the Democratic Strategy Initiative think tank in Berlin. Thanks very much for being with us. What do you think is the significance of this?
Well, I certainly think the signal of improved relations is very welcome here in Berlin, but the substance will honestly be a little harder to find, because even though both Labour and the governing Social Democratic Party here in Germany are social democratic parties, they don't actually have quite as much in common as one may think. On Ukraine, for example, they're quite far apart. The British government has made clear that they support Ukraine's victory in Ukraine, which is something that nearly 3 years into the conflict, Olaf Scholz has still not done. And his government policy reflects that. Also, they're both in a bit of a bind when it comes to resources, but Germany's is actually self-inflicted through this so-called debt brake that limits its fiscal flexibility, whereas Keir Starmer has inherited a bad fiscal situation. So it will have to take a lot of work and quite some innovative thinking to find that substance that would realise the potential that Keir Starmer talked about there in the relationship.
What do you think about people who voted for Brexit in the UK, and they are saying, some of them, that they're worried that actually Keir Starmer wants to get much closer to our European partners once again, maybe kind of forge new relationships with Europe when they voted to sever those relationships?
Back in the Brexit time warp again. All that matters is the people that voted to leave in June 2016. But the BBC don't seem to recognise that millions of them have died subsequently, and many new voters have turned 18. Not only that, the vote itself was not a majority. It was merely 27% of the population. More people didn't vote for Brexit by a huge majority than those who did.
Well, they voted to sever a particular form of that relationship, and I certainly think that the war in Ukraine, Russia's full-scale invasion, has brought home to most people in the UK, the vast majority there, the importance of cooperating on the most important issues with the UK's partners across Europe. And that's why we also see security and defence at the heart of this attempted reset. But don't forget that the UK and Germany have been here before. This is the third attempted security and defence agreement within the last 10 years. So again, they will really have to actually find the substance. And I think then the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. And it's up to then people in the UK to judge whether that serves their interests or not. But certainly most experts here, and I think in London as well, actually see great potential for cooperation on security between the two countries.
But it isn't just security and defence, is it? I mean, Keir Starmer wants greater economic cooperation as well.
That's right, and that's going to be difficult to achieve given the constraints that Germany has by being part of the single market and the constraints the UK has by not being part of the single market. But there are things one can do, and sharing technology, joint investment in green technology, for example, which is another part of the agreement that they want to sign, and also played a role in the agenda of Keir Starmer's visit to Berlin, visiting the Siemens Energy department here. That shows where they can also do more. And it's interesting to see that in the context of the UK government having moved ahead at speed since coming into power with reducing planning restrictions, installing more solar and wind power. And that's something that Germany wants to do as well. And I think there is potential for that kind of cooperation, as well as for mutual defence investment.
And he's going on to France. He's going to see Macron. I mean, is it no coincidence possibly that he's going to the two powerhouses of the EU, Germany and France?
Well, it's a very interesting point, actually, because it reflects something of an outdated view of the EU, that European cooperation essentially means dealing with Berlin and Paris. And that's a view that is somewhat entrenched in London, but it's not actually kept pace with reality. In both the European Union and among European NATO states, it states to the east, in Central Eastern Europe, Poland, the Baltic states, also the Nordic states, who are really driving the agenda on security and on facing up to our biggest challenges from Russia and China. And so while this reflects a desire to reinvigorate those traditional relationships with what are undoubtedly large and important players, France and Germany, I think actually the UK's reset would benefit from a bit of a reconfiguration towards the east and north.
All right, interesting. Benjamin Tallis, director of the Democratic Strategy Initiative think tank in Berlin. Thank you very much indeed for your
work that Keir Starmer is doing today is fundamental and important, but there's an awful lot more work to do to ensure that Britain gets back on her feet again. And we can't reverse Brexit, it happened, but we can repair the country by improving trade links with our biggest trade partner, which of course is right next door to us on our own continent.
It beggars belief that we're still harking on about a vote 8 years ago and talking about voters that are no longer even alive, but that their vote still counts. I can't think of any country in the world that would be doing this. And it's clear that the only way we can get rid of this Brexit curse is by going back to the polls and showing the world that Britain has changed its mind about Brexit, and we know it has because all the opinion polls shows us that. Don't forget to comment and let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe and hit the notification button and you'll be notified every time I post a video.